My brother had me dragged out of his engagement party in handcuffs, screaming to 200 guests that I was a fraud and a thief. He stood there in his $1,000 suit, his fiancée clinging to his arm, watching with satisfaction as security escorted me past our sobbing mother and stone-faced father. What he didn't know was that the rental car I'd arrived in was actually a federal surveillance vehicle, and the reason I'd shown up at all wasn't to celebrate his love story. It was to gather the final piece of evidence that would send him to prison for the next 15 years. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to where this really started. About 6 hours earlier, when I was sitting in a cramped FBI field office in downtown Chicago, staring at surveillance photos of my own brother. The coffee in my hand had gone cold an hour ago. I was exhausted. I'd been working the Meridian financial case for 8 months, tracking a sophisticated Ponzi scheme that had defrauded over 300 investors out of nearly $50 million. The operation was slick, professional, and the person running it had been careful, almost untraceable. Until 3 weeks ago, when one of our forensic accountants found a digital fingerprint that led us to a name I recognized immediately: Brandon Michael Chen. My baby brother. I'd stared at that name on the screen for a full minute, feeling my stomach drop through the floor. It had to be a mistake. Brandon was a real estate agent. He sold condos in the suburbs. He posted inspirational quotes on LinkedIn and went to networking events. He wasn't a criminal mastermind, except he was. My supervisor, Agent Martinez, had pulled me aside. "Sarah, I need you to recuse yourself from this case. Family conflict of interest." But I'd convinced him to let me stay on. I'd argued that my connection to Brandon could be an asset. I knew his patterns, his weaknesses, and more importantly, I needed to see this through. If my brother was really running a $50 million fraud scheme, I needed to know. So here I was, 6 hours before his engagement party, looking at photos of Brandon meeting with known money launderers, accepting briefcases full of cash, signing fraudulent investment documents. The evidence was overwhelming. We had him dead to rights. The engagement party was tonight. Black tie, 200 guests, at the prestigious Lakeview Country Club. Brandon had been bragging about it for months, in the family group chat I mostly ignored. His fiancée, Melissa, came from old money. Her father was a circuit court judge. This party was Brandon's coronation, his arrival into high society. And it was also the perfect opportunity for us to execute the arrest warrant we'd just secured that morning. I looked down at my outfit. I was wearing jeans and a FBI windbreaker, my hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, my service weapon holstered at my hip. This was my real life. But to my family, I was Sarah Chen, boring insurance adjuster who worked for a regional company processing claims for water damage and fender benders. I'd maintained that cover for 7 years to protect my real work. My parents thought I was a failure. Brandon was the success story, the golden child who'd made something of himself. The irony was suffocating. Martinez walked over. "Chen, we're moving the timeline up. We're executing the warrant tonight, at the party. Maximum impact, maximum witness count. We want everyone to see what he really is." I nodded slowly. "I'll need to change." I went home to my small apartment and stood in front of my closet. I had exactly one formal dress, a simple black cocktail dress I'd bought 3 years ago for a work function and never worn since. I put it on, along with heels that made my feet hurt and minimal makeup. I looked in the mirror. I looked tired. I looked like someone who worked 80-hour weeks tracking financial criminals and lived on coffee and takeout. But I also looked like someone who was about to burn down her brother's entire world. I drove to the country club in the surveillance vehicle, a black SUV with tinted windows and enough recording equipment in the back to capture every word of what was about to happen. My partner, Agent Kim, was already inside, posing as a guest. 2 more agents were stationed outside. Local PD had been briefed and were on standby. When I pulled up to the valet stand, the attendant looked at the government plates and hesitated. I handed him the keys anyway. "I'm with the FBI. Don't move this vehicle." He nodded, eyes wide. I walked into the country club. The lobby was decorated with white roses and gold ribbons, everything excessive and expensive. I could hear music and laughter coming from the ballroom. I took a breath and walked in. The room went quiet almost immediately. Not completely silent, but there was a noticeable drop in volume as heads turned. I saw my Aunt Linda whisper something to my cousin Jessica. I saw my father's business partner, Mr. Wong, look at me and then look away, shaking his head. And then I saw my mother. She was standing near the bar, wearing a jade green dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. When she saw me, her face went through several emotions: surprise, confusion, and then something that looked like disappointment. She walked over quickly, her heels clicking on the marble floor. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" "I'm here for Brandon's engagement party, Mom. I was invited." "You were invited out of obligation," she said quietly, her voice tight. "And you show up dressed like that?" "Sarah, this is a formal event. Melissa's family is here. The judge is here. Couldn't you have made an effort?" I looked down at my dress. It was perfectly appropriate, but I knew what she meant. It wasn't designer. It wasn't flashy. It didn't scream success and money. "I came straight from work, Mom. I'm sorry if I'm not up to Brandon's standards." She sighed, a sound of pure frustration. "It's always something with you, isn't it? Always an excuse. Your brother is trying to build a life here, Sarah. He's trying to build connections. And you show up looking like you work at a DMV." I bit back the response I wanted to give. Instead, I said, "Where's Brandon?" "He's with Melissa's father, networking." "Where you should be, if you had any ambition." She paused, looking at me with something that might have been pity. "Sarah, honey, when are you going to take your life seriously? You're 32. You're still working that dead-end job, living in that terrible apartment. Don't you want more?" I wanted to tell her that I had more. I wanted to tell her that I'd spent the last 7 years building a career that actually mattered, that I'd helped take down human traffickers and organized crime rings and corrupt politicians. I wanted to tell her that the dead-end job she was so ashamed of was actually a cover for work that had saved lives. But I couldn't, so I just said, "I'm doing fine, Mom." She shook her head and walked away. I grabbed a glass of water from a passing server and moved deeper into the room. I spotted Brandon immediately. He was standing in the center of a crowd, holding court. He was wearing a custom-tailored navy suit, his hair perfectly styled, his smile wide and confident. He looked successful. He looked like he belonged here. Melissa was next to him, wearing a white cocktail dress that probably cost 5 figures, her engagement ring so large it looked like a prop. She was laughing at something her father had just said, touching Brandon's arm possessively. I watched them for a moment. There was a time when Brandon and I had been close. When we were kids, we'd been a team. But somewhere along the way, things had shifted. Our parents had started comparing us, holding Brandon up as the example, and using me as the cautionary tale. And Brandon had leaned into it, had started believing his own hype. He saw me. His smile faltered for just a second, and then it came back, wider and sharper. He excused himself from the group and walked over. "Sarah, you actually came. Hi, Brandon. Congratulations on your engagement." "Thanks." He looked me up and down, his expression unreadable. "Nice dress. Is it from Target?" I felt the dig land. "No, it's from Nordstrom Rack, but close." He laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "Still working that insurance job? Still processing claims?" "Yeah. That's great, Sarah. Real great." He took a sip of his champagne. "You know, Melissa's cousin works in insurance. Maybe you two should talk. He could probably get you a better position. Something with actual advancement potential." "I'm good where I am, Brandon." "Sure you are." He looked past me, scanning the room. "Listen, I'm glad you're here and everything, but try to keep a low profile, okay? This is kind of an important night for me and Melissa. Her family is here, and they're used to a certain level of success. I don't want them getting the wrong impression about our family." I stared at him. What impression would that be? Just be cool. He patted my shoulder like I was a child and walked away. I stood there, holding my water, watching him return to his crowd of admirers. I felt that familiar mix of hurt and anger that always came with family interactions. The little voice in my head that said maybe they were right, maybe I was the failure. But then I remembered the files in my car. The evidence. The victims whose life savings Brandon had stolen. The elderly couples who'd lost their retirement funds. The single mothers who'd invested their kids' college money based on Brandon's promises. I pulled out my phone and texted Agent Kim. Target identified. In position. Awaiting your signal. The response came back immediately. Copy. Stand by. I moved to the edge of the room and waited. The party continued around me. I watched Brandon give a toast, watched him kiss Melissa, watched our parents beam with pride as their golden son charmed a room full of wealthy people who had no idea they were celebrating a criminal. About an hour into the party, things shifted. I was standing near the dessert table when I heard Brandon's voice rise above the music. Sarah! Sarah! Come here for a second. I turned. He was waving me over, his smile forced. Melissa was next to him, along with her father, Judge Harrison, and about a dozen other guests. I walked over slowly, already sensing that something was wrong. Sarah, Brandon said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. I just want to introduce you to Melissa's father, Judge Harrison. Judge, this is my sister Sarah. She works in insurance. The judge extended his hand. I shook it. Pleasure to meet you, sir. Likewise. Brandon's told us a lot about you. All good things, I hope. Brandon laughed, too loud. Mostly good. Hey, Sarah, what kind of car are you driving these days? Still have that old Honda? I felt the trap closing. No, I traded it in. Oh yeah? What are you driving now? A Ford Explorer. A Ford Explorer, Brandon repeated, looking at the judge. That's interesting, because when you pulled up, the valet mentioned you were driving a black SUV with government plates. You want to explain that? The room had gone quiet again. Everyone was watching. It's a work vehicle, I said calmly. A work vehicle. From an insurance company. Brandon's voice was getting louder, more aggressive, with government plates. Sarah, are you going to stand there and lie to everyone here? Or are you going to admit what you really are? Brandon, I don't know what you're talking about. He pulled out his phone, triumphant. I had the valet take a picture. Look at this. He held up his phone, showing a photo of my SUV. That's a federal vehicle, Sarah. You stole it, didn't you? You stole a government car and drove it here to try to impress everyone, to pretend like you're something you're not. The crowd gasped. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. The judge's expression hardened. Brandon, that's insane, I said. Why would I steal a car? Because you're jealous, Brandon shouted, his face flushing red. Because you can't stand that I'm successful, and you're not. You've always been jealous, always trying to tear me down, and now you've gone too far. You've committed a federal crime, Sarah. You stole government property. He pulled out his phone again. I'm calling the police. Judge Harrison, I apologize for this. I had no idea my sister had become this desperate. Brandon, don't, our mother pleaded, stepping forward. Please, let's just handle this quietly. No, Mom. She needs to face consequences for once in her life. He was already dialing. She's been lying to this family for years, pretending to have a real job, and now she's stealing cars? I'm done covering for her. I stood there, watching him perform. This was it. This was the moment. I could feel Agent Kim moving into position behind me. I could see the other agents filtering into the room through the side entrances. Brandon had the phone to his ear. Yes, I need to report a stolen vehicle. Federal government vehicle. My sister stole it and drove it to the Lakeview Country Club. He paused, listening. Yes, I'll hold. The room was absolutely silent. 200 people watching. Our parents looked mortified. Melissa looked confused. The judge looked like he was already planning to distance himself from this family. Brandon put the phone on speaker so everyone could hear. The dispatcher's voice came through. Sir, what's your location again? Lakeview Country Club, 4500 Lakeshore Drive. The vehicle is a black Ford Explorer. The suspect is my sister, Sarah Chen. She's here right now. And you're reporting this vehicle as stolen. Yes, she doesn't work for the government. She works for an insurance company. She obviously stole it. There was a pause. Then the dispatcher said, Sir, can you describe your sister? Brandon looked at me, smirking. Sure. 5'5", black hair, wearing a black dress. Asian female, 32 years old. Another pause. Sir, is your sister's full name Sarah May Chen, date of birth March 15th? Yes, that's her. And she's there with you now? Yes, she's standing right in front of me. Are you sending officers? Sir, I need you to stay calm. Officers are already on scene. Brandon's smile widened. Great. They can arrest her right here. Sir, that's not. Can you put your sister on the phone, please? Brandon held out the phone to me, his expression victorious. The police want to talk to you, Sarah. Better start thinking about your defense. I took the phone. The room was watching. I could see people whispering, recording on their phones. This was exactly what we wanted. Maximum exposure. This is Sarah Chen, I said calmly. The dispatcher's voice was professional. Agent Chen, this is dispatch. Local units are requesting confirmation of your status. Confirmed. I'm on scene. Operation is in progress. Copy that. Units are standing by for your signal. I handed the phone back to Brandon. His smile had frozen on his face. What? What did she just say? I reached into my small clutch purse and pulled out my credentials. FBI shield and ID card. I held it up so everyone in the immediate area could see it. My name is Special Agent Sarah Chen, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Financial Crimes Unit. The vehicle outside is my assigned government vehicle. I'm here in an official capacity. The room erupted. Brandon's face went white. Melissa gasped. The judge's eyebrows shot up. My mother made a sound like she'd been punched. Brandon stumbled backward. No, that's fake. That's a fake badge. You bought it online or something. You're lying. I'm not lying, Brandon. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the moment he realized this was real. And you're under arrest. The agents moved in. Agent Kim stepped forward, badge out. Brandon Chen, you're under arrest for wire fraud, securities fraud, and operating an unlicensed investment scheme. Brandon's legs seemed to give out. He grabbed onto a nearby chair. What? No, this is insane. Sarah, what are you doing? Agent Kim was reading him his rights. 2 more agents were clearing a path through the crowd. The local PD officers were coming through the main entrance. Melissa was screaming. This is a mistake. Brandon doesn't do anything illegal. He's a real estate agent. He's also running a $50 million Ponzi scheme, I said, my voice carrying across the now silent ballroom. Meridian Financial Investments. Ring a bell. Brandon's face confirmed everything. Judge Harrison stepped forward, his expression cold. Melissa, step away from him. Now. Daddy, he didn't do anything. Melissa, his company sent me prospectus materials last month, trying to get me to invest. I declined because the returns seemed too good to be true. The judge looked at Brandon with pure disgust. You tried to scam me. At my daughter's engagement party, the agents were putting handcuffs on Brandon. He was crying now, mascara from his perfectly styled look running down his face. Sarah, please don't do this. I'm your brother. I walked closer to him, close enough that only he could hear me. You called the police on me, Brandon. You tried to have me arrested in front of 200 people. You wanted to humiliate me. You wanted everyone to see me fail. I didn't know, he sobbed. I didn't know you were FBI. No, you thought I was nobody. You thought I was so far beneath you that you could destroy me in public and no one would care. I stepped back, but now everyone knows what you really are. They led him away. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Some people were filming. Others were whispering frantically. I could hear fragments of conversation. I invested with him. My retirement fund, $50 million. My mother pushed through the crowd. Sarah, stop this. Stop this right now. He's your brother. He's a criminal. Mom, you're lying. You're making this up because you're jealous. I pulled out my phone and opened the case file. I showed her the photos. Brandon with the money launderers, the forged documents, the list of victims. These are your friends, Mom. Your bridge club invested with him. The Wongs invested their daughter's college fund. The Chens down the street put in their life savings. My mother stared at the phone, her face crumbling. No, that can't be right. It's all right there. We've been investigating him for 8 months. Tonight was the arrest operation. My father appeared, his face pale. Sarah, what have you done? I did my job, Dad. I investigated a criminal and gathered evidence for prosecution. He's family. He's a thief. He stole from 300 people. Some of them are in this room right now. I looked around. I could see faces I recognized: family, friends, community members, people who were just realizing what had happened to their money. Mrs. Lin, my mother's best friend, walked over slowly. "Sarah, did Brandon really take our money?" I looked at her kind face, her trembling hands. "Yes, Mrs. Lin. I'm so sorry. We're working on asset recovery, but it's going to take time." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Then she turned to my mother. "You raised a monster, and you were so proud of him." The party dissolved into chaos. Some people were demanding to talk to agents. Others were crying. Melissa had locked herself in a bathroom. The judge was on his phone, probably calling his own lawyer. I stood in the middle of it all, watching the destruction. This was what justice looked like. It wasn't clean. It wasn't triumphant. It was messy and painful and devastating. Agent Martinez appeared at my elbow. "Good work, Chen. We got everything we needed. The confession, the witness statements, the whole operation was clean." I nodded, suddenly exhausted. "Take the rest of the week off. You've earned it." I walked out of the country club. The valet had my keys ready. He looked at me with something like awe. "You're really FBI?" "Yeah." That was the coolest thing I've ever seen. I drove home in silence. I didn't feel cool. I felt empty. 6 months later, I sat in the back row of a federal courtroom, wearing a simple gray suit. Brandon stood before the judge, thinner than I remembered, his expensive suit replaced with a prison jumpsuit. He'd taken a plea deal. In exchange for cooperation in recovering assets and testifying against his money laundering partners, the prosecutor had agreed to 15 years instead of 25. The judge looked at him with no sympathy. "Mr. Chen, you preyed on your own community. You stole from people who trusted you, including your parents' closest friends. You showed no remorse until you were caught. 15 years in federal prison. Restitution of $42 million. The gavel came down. They led him away. He didn't look back. My parents were sitting 2 rows in front of me. They'd aged 20 years in 6 months. The scandal had destroyed them socially. Their friends had stopped calling. They'd had to sell their house to pay back the money Brandon had stolen from them. Yes, from them too. He'd convinced them to invest their retirement savings in his guaranteed returns scheme. As the courtroom emptied, my mother turned around. She looked at me with hollow eyes. "Are you happy now?" she asked. "Your brother is going to prison. Your family is destroyed. Are you satisfied?" I stood up, gathering my things. "Mom, I didn't destroy this family. Brandon did. I just made sure he faced consequences. He was trying to make something of himself. He was stealing from people, from your friends, from you." She flinched. "We needed that money. Your father's health insurance doesn't cover everything." "I know. I'm sorry." And I was. Despite everything, I was sorry they'd been hurt. "You could have warned us," my father said, his voice rough. "You could have told us what he was doing before it got this bad." I tried. "I tried to tell you last year that his returns seemed suspicious. You told me I was jealous." Silence. "I've been reassigned," I said quietly. "I'm moving to D.C. There's a position opening up in the financial crimes headquarters. It's a promotion." My mother's face twisted. "Of course it is. You get promoted for destroying your own brother. I get promoted for doing my job well. For protecting people. You didn't protect us." I looked at them both. These people who'd never believed in me, who'd never thought I was enough, and I felt something inside me finally let go. "No, I didn't. You're right. I protected the 300 other victims instead. I protected the Lin family and the Wong family and all the other people who trusted Brandon. I chose them over you." "We're your parents," my mother whispered. "And I'm the person who stops criminals, even when those criminals are family." I picked up my bag. "I'm leaving for D.C. Next month. I won't be coming back for holidays." "Sarah, you wanted Brandon to be successful so badly that you ignored every warning sign. You enabled him. And when he got caught, you blamed me for doing the right thing." I walked past them, toward the courtroom doors. "I hope you find a way to forgive yourselves. But I'm done trying to earn your approval." I pushed through the doors and walked out into the bright afternoon sun. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Agent Martinez. "Drinks tonight to celebrate your promotion?" I smiled, the first genuine smile in months. "Absolutely. I'll bring the team. I walked to my car, the same black SUV with government plates. I got in, adjusted the rearview mirror, and looked at my reflection. I saw a woman who'd chosen justice over family loyalty. A woman who'd stood up to the people who were supposed to love her and said, "No, I won't lie for you anymore." I saw a federal agent who was damn good at her job. I put the car in drive and pulled out of the parking lot, leaving the courthouse and my old life behind. The weight I'd been carrying for 32 years, the desperate need to make my parents proud, was finally gone. I was free, and I was going to be just fine.